It's after 6 o'clock, and this morning we put in the national budget for 2023-2024 inside your spotlight on now.
And yes, welcome back. So budget is in focus right about now. We're talking about the budget, national budget 2023-2024. And this morning, it's all about innovation and diversification of the economy. Dr. Keith Nurse, president of the College of Science, Technology and Applied Arts, Trinidad and Tobago, that's COSTAT, is here with us this morning to discuss that with us. So thank you. Good morning to you. And thank you for being here with us this morning, Dr. Nurse.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Now, the budget theme this year, according to the Minister of Finance, in the budget statement, he said, is building capacity for diversification and growth within a world of challenges. So that's what he said the theme of this year's budget is. What do you think about that theme this year coming, building capacity for diversification and growth?
Oh, no. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here on TTT. It's been a while since I've been on with you. We are indeed faced with very challenging times. A lot of it is external, so the climate change dimension, as well as things like disaster relief and so on, have become far more important in terms of managing the economy. As we've seen over the years, things like the flooding problem is becoming more of a critical issue, affecting much more communities around Trinidad and Tobago. But it's also, we still have to deal with issues relating to things like pandemics, emerging diseases, as well as longer term issues. And that's what I want to talk a bit more about. If you look at Trinidad and Tobago and most other Caribbean economies, we are spending a lot of our resources on things like health. It accounts for, in some instances, 6% or more of our GDP. And in many respects, the chronic non-communicable disease profile in the Caribbean is among the highest in the world. And that impacts things like productivity losses. So in fact, we are among the top 20 in terms of productivity losses as a result of chronic non-communicable diseases. So what we need to be doing is shifting more of our resources from traditional expenditure on health from a curative standpoint towards health in a framework where it's about building public health, making sure that people don't get ill in the first place. And we see that also with the economy, by and large, which is that we need to be investing more in the new growth elements of the global economy. And that's where Trinidad and Tobago is falling a bit behind. So if you look at our rankings in the Global Innovation Index, we've been slipping among high middle-income countries and high-income countries. We are at the bottom of that ranking. And part of that has to do with data capture. So I was really happy to see that we're introducing a National Institute for Statistics so that we get some of that data capture problems resolved. So it's really a focus on shifting away from the traditional approach to budgeting and planning. In fact, if you look at Trinidad and Tobago and most other countries in the English-speaking Caribbean, our annual budget has become our main means of planning. Yeah. Now, you can't plan for the future on a year-to-year basis, which is what we've been doing by and large. So longer-term strategic initiatives require a longer time frame. So innovation is a 10 to 20-year framework for planning. And so the budgeting process doesn't really cater for that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned health, and health was allocated $7.409 billion. There are other things as well, national security, public utilities, agriculture, which, we always talk about when we talk about diversification. Do you think that enough money was allotted to those agencies to actually help promote diversification and innovation?
Well, I think, you have to dig into the details. So it's not so much how much money are they getting, is what they're spending
doing
it on.
With it, right?
Education got the biggest share of the budget, understandably so. The Ministry of Education is the largest employer We have lots of teachers. So the question then is, are we equipping people, for example, in education areas for the new growth economy? In the areas of health, are we investing enough in preventative health? And in areas like agriculture, are we investing enough to do two things? Generate new export areas, as well as do what we call import replacement. Because the food import bill has ballooned over the years. And so you want to be identifying those new growth areas that can, in fact, particularly deal with the foreign exchange situation that we are faced with.
One of the things that I noticed when I was just reading through those things is that they're actually putting some money into coconut farming. So they're investing into coconut farming. They're putting more money into cocoa farming as well. How do you think this can work for us? Because like you said, it's all long term. So it's not just going to happen overnight, because these things take time to grow, take time to develop. And do we have the industries available to really tap into whatever rewards we can get from those industries?
Okay, so those are two great examples. The coconut industry, and particularly coconut oil industry, had declined considerably all across the Caribbean. And so we are importing a lot of foreign oils, cooking oils. So you go to the supermarket shelves, it's predominated with imported cooking oil, which is an essential. So can we switch the consumption of the population towards more coconut oil, which is actually better for you than most of the other oils?
I will go for it. I use it.
Yeah, same for me. All right. In fact, if you go to not the supermarket, if you go to pharmacies, the high-end supermarkets, they're selling things like MCT, which is made from coconut oil. So it's considered a superfood. It's high-end. A big bottle of that will cost you $120, $130, etc. So the coconut industry has huge growth potential beyond just making coconut oil for cooking.
Cooking purposes, yes.
All right. So, and Trinidad has done really well in the cocoa chocolate industry. We now have an increased diversity of producers producing specialty products that are really high quality, that could command a global marketplace. Okay, so what do we do to get these new specialty products into global marketplaces? How do we fit into global value chains? And that's where I think we are not spending enough resources or enough effort or developing a clear strategy. And that's where we need more diversification in terms of where the resources are going. Those are examples of where there's future growth potential, clearly identified in the marketplace already. We need to be putting more resources behind it.
And as you talk about that, what part do you think the public sector plays in advancing the process of economic diversification and innovation as well? What do we play, that public sector aspect of it, not private too much?
Yeah. What we call public sector innovation is a very important part of the diversification process. So, for example, many countries that are moving or surging ahead are doing things like public procurement for certain goods. So, for example, green public procurement. So the government, by one stroke of the pen, can build a whole new green innovation instead of industries by requiring all the new buildings that are being built by the government, for example, to do everything from solar roofs,
friendly,
rainwater capture, to be LED buildings, and all these kinds of innovations really help to stoke a new set of job opportunities. And in that regard, we see some efforts along those lines. So let's say the cybersecurity tax allowance is a really good example of an allowance that helps to direct investment into new areas. We need to be strengthening their investment into digitalization, and also into things like dealing with our waste, which then has Trinidad and Tobago produces a lot of waste.
It does. It does.
All right? Particularly things like what you call them, plastic bottles.
Yes.
We see them in
Plastic products, yes, all the time.
in the drains,
Yeah.
in the rivers.
But not even
and in
that
the sea.
type of waste. We also have the larger items, because you see them come down as well, like the fridges, the stoves, and these types of things. And how do we manage something like that?
Yeah. Well, already we have, and there have been efforts by the government to introduce new legislation that deals with, for example, the plastic bottle waste.
Yeah.
Recycling and so on. The Solid Waste Management Company has in place a number of areas that they're targeting. That legislation hasn't yet come into being. It's been around since 2012. And we need to push through on something like that because it requires those who are producers of the plastic bottles to take greater responsibility for the waste. And this is what's happening with most countries around the world. We are moving towards a zero waste transition whereby you create a circular economy so that no resources go unutilized.
Yeah.
So what we have now is a lot of resources virtually going down the drain.
That's it. And they work in isolation as well, not in tandem with each other.
Correct.
So
yeah, and that's something. So what you see in innovation literature is that economies that are able to facilitate higher level of collaboration and coherence. So in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a lot of industries not necessarily working in tandem with government initiatives. And then we have a number of government agencies that are also not necessarily working all in concert. And so we have resources that are not being allocated in the most efficient way.
Yeah. Now let's go to higher education because there have been some changes, some additions to what they want to do with respect to technology. What role, though, does higher education institutions, what role do they play in this transformation process, if any at all?
Well, higher education really plays a critical role. Normally, when we think about education, we think of it as a social policy. And very much so it is indeed the case. It allows for families and communities and individuals to move up the economic ladder, to improve their livelihoods, etc. But higher education in particular has a strong impact on economic policy because it's at universities and colleges that we generate the new people, the new knowledge workers that are going to work in the new knowledge enterprises. Without those skills, you're not going to be globally competitive. But higher education plays a critical role in terms of innovation policy as well. It is there that the new areas of research are being developed, but also applied research, so that you are generating new ways of doing things. And in this regard, Trinidad and Tobago has been underspending and underinvesting in research and development for decades now. It's remained almost the same, about 1/4% of our GDP. The countries that we are ranked with are all spending close to 1%, between 1% and 2%. Because Trinidad is a high middle income country, almost a high income country. And so when you rank us with those who have the same GDP, we are at the end of the totem pole. So it means then that we need to be redirecting even a small percentage of our budget in this area. Now, the irony of it is that even though this is so important, there's not a natural constituency that is lobbying. Not like how you have the Supermarkets Association, for example.
Oh, okay.
All right, or the Car Dealers Association, who are clamoring in a way. And so often we say in politics, who barks the most gets the most.
But is there a reason for that?
Well, higher education and also the firms that are engaged in research and development tend to be more quiet in the sense that they don't want to drum their own horn and that kind of thing.
Even if it helps.
Even though it helps.
Yeah,
I mean, we do talk about it. But it's also that in more developed economies, what you find is that the private sector is the key demander of innovation. In developing countries, they tend to be not investing as much in research and development. And so the natural constituency, who actually are the main beneficiaries of research and development, are not necessarily coming to the forefront. And so what we have to do then, in effect, is almost do a little bit of a political trickery, which is that we must trick ourselves into doing this.
Yeah.
By, for example, in the budget, there needs to be a line item that talks about diversification and innovation, and we should be measuring it every year. So how much are we spending on research and development? Are we going to be spending 1/4%, or are we aiming to be 1/2% and move progressively along that chain?
But is it too because we do rely, because you say, you know, the more developed countries, they do more of it than we do. Is it because that we rely on whatever they do and we just follow through with whatever they find and, you know, work with that? Do you think that that is one of the reasons?
Part of it is, that's the case. No, well, historically, if you look at our economies, the research and development that we've benefited from has come through foreign direct investment. So all our key sectors, all our key export sectors were owned, run, and managed by foreign firms.
Yeah.
The global economy is in a different phase now. If you're a developing economy, you're depending on foreign direct investment to drive this new growth in your economy is going to be absent because foreign direct investment is becoming increasingly fragmented. They're only going into economies where either for resource extraction, as we've had historically, or if you can compete in a particular segment of the particular value chain. If you're not in any of those two categories, then you're out of the loop. And so in Trinidad and Tobago's case, with declining reserves, it means then that we need to be investing more in specific growth opportunities, like the ones you mentioned, coconut, cocoa and chocolate industries, the circular economy, where we're dealing with recycling, dealing with waste, and then there are a whole range of other growth industries, for example, in the creative economy, which accounts for one of the fastest growing elements in the global economy. And then there's tourism, where we're diversifying the tourism beyond, you know, sand and sea, to focus on things like heritage tourism. I
think the tourism industry still needs to be developed. It's still at a point where it's still in a baby phase. And, you know, there's still development to be had. And not just look at Tobago as well for tourism, but there's so many things in Trinidad as well that can be developed that are not necessarily tapped into.
Yeah. And Tobago is a really important area because, I mean, the arrivals to Tobago have dropped considerably over the years. So we need to revitalize the airlift. So airlift is really still important.
Yes.
But when the tourists get there, what is the experience?
That's it.
So we need to have things on offer that they could purchase beyond duty free.
Yeah.
Because duty free is important. And so this is where we are talking about building a set of new capacities. Trinidad and Tobago is ripe for this because in many respects, we have a well-developed and well-trained population. And many thanks to the government of Trinidad and Tobago over the years, the investments in higher education have been substantial. But it's now that we need to redirect into new growth areas.
Oh, Dr. Nis, I want to thank you so much. Just in 10 seconds, your final words.
My final words are, you know, Trinidad and Tobago can punch above its weight category. What we need to do is be more strategic in terms of where we're investing, particularly in higher education, but also in terms of creating a new capacity for the private sector to invest in the new growth areas.
And that's how we can improve on technology, innovation, and all these things, science, technology. Yes, that's how we can do it. Dr. Keith Nis, thank you so much. He is the president of the College of Science, Technology, and Applied Arts of Trinidad and Tobago. That's COSTAT. Thank you so much for being here and discussing this with us this morning on the Now Morning Show. We've still got more to come, so stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
I see footprints that man have left on the sand while walking through times. I see fruits of our ambitions, figments of our imaginations.
Can you count 1 to 10 first? I just do this.
Oh, no, that's just my